my grandma's mom's dad. This is a very rare picture. This is Frank Lunn, her cousin. This is extremely rare. I only more recently took copies of these. These are of old relatives. Women were different in this time period. She was from the 40s time. Pictures were taken differently. Her name was Margaret, and this is his rare pictures, and we have British blood as well, but in the earlier 40s, in her young years, she grew up on a farm, and women were different, especially the 30s to the 40s, and we're talking about like Sharon Tate, the woman in the 60s, are very different from the woman of this time, or her friends, and their sister Dorothy. They grew up on a farm in Connecticut. Women were very, very different around this time. You could always tell by people's voice how they pretty much look. Women's voices were even different. I had pictures of Sharon Tate on my wall because my grandma had books on her, and my first boyfriend saw me as too polished, more like a white valley girl. I was brunette naturally, but like, he liked my hair red. He preferred it red, to dye it red, and he was into like Guns N' Roses. He liked heavy metal and was a bass player in a group. And at that time, I had changed my appearance more. He wanted me to be more heavy metal, like wearing skeleton shirts and not so polished, like you think of a white valley girl type, because he was Spanish speaking, different dialect, Puerto Rican mixed, and a little black Afro, different the way they speak. Her and his mom was a widow. His dad was a smoker and died around that time, and he was paying the rent for his mom and all of that at the time. But like, I was thinking about how much I've changed from since then. Like, things did change a lot, time period and all that. And oh yeah, like, it's different when you're dating a different race. It's very different. The people, how their houses smell, even the scents, to what cleaners they use, to what food they eat, and how they live, they're very different. Not everybody, culturally, it's very different. Even to how they kiss, to how they talk to their brothers and sisters, it's very different. But yeah, that's how I started off, was very different, opposite from me. But yeah, the women of this time were definitely not the woman of how. That's a nice picture. It's my grandma poking out with a snow plow. It was totally different time. She was coming from a very conservative era. By the 60s and 70s, things got crazy. The pill came out, birth control. People didn't know much about the pill before that. It was just before the internet. It was very, very different, because also I met my boyfriend through the MySpace years ago, and that's how we started talking in the begin with. A little dark guy, very dark and different. Didn't even like Easter. He didn't even like me celebrating Easter. So the guy was the completely opposite. I didn't think it was going to last forever, but I knew how he was. Even my mom said she knew that his smile was kind of phony and fake. She knew he was not innocent. She didn't know all the details about how bad he was. Of course, I wouldn't tell her right away what was going on, that he was like traumatized, and I was traumatized as well, but he was far worse, but had more worse charactered things going on with him, because I was on medication then. It was antidepressants then, and eventually I went off of everything. I went off of all of that, but I was nearly on a med. I was acting kind of like zombie-like, because it takes time to get used to medication, like Wellbutrin. And then eventually I was able to kick in. But the stupid thing is, he told his mom she's on medication and doesn't have a job. I didn't like him telling that when here where she didn't even know who I was, and I started volunteering, and then I got hired, but it made me sound real stupid, like, oh, she's on medication, doesn't have a job, like I'm some loser. He didn't know how to say a first few things about me in the beginning, and he had a job young, straight out of high school, but I volunteered at a hospital and eventually at an animal place and got busy and then got a job, and he found it weird that, oh, you don't trust animals, like you gotta, you need to learn to like watch out with animals though more, because I was like, I got used to the idea of working with animals, but he's a weirdo around animals. Okay, this guy is a little too friendly around animals in an unnatural way, and I just found it to be strange, his relationship with animals. Including, was traumatized, and his here I started working with animals, and he would tell me like, "Oh, you can't really always trust animals; they could bite you in the ass," kind of thing. Like, well, Funny says that, and he watches this kind of stuff, like, "Oh, funny say that, ha ha ha," like Joe Exotic, which, by the way, Joe Exotic is engaged. He's probably married now by with an illegal in prison. Has scabies. He has scabies, and he wants the president to help him out of prison. And he's like in prison in Texas or something like that. But Joe Exotic is the most foulest, one of the most disgusting people out there. As we're talking about the soul and the voice, you could always tell by someone's voice how they are. Like voices like Dave Mustaine, you know that guy's like a punk rocker, metal guy when he sings. The lead singer of Metallica, you could tell that he sounds more like an Irish, trying to sound like Sin Lizzy kind of voice, but the way he sings is different. He's trying to sound like those old-fashioned Irish singers. Like he was inspired by Thin Lizzy. You could tell his singing voice, but his personality is there. There's two hot-headed redheads, which we have redheads on the side of the family, like Carrie. And Carrie gets passionate. She starts looking you in the eye, and there's this creepy look in her eye. Like she gets way too like passionate talking about politics and things. She almost like she's gonna bite you in the ass. Like she look at her like, man, she's a redhead, and her freckles are red. And you could tell she's a genuine, true redhead. She doesn't dye her hair red. That is a true, genuine redhead with her red freckles on her arms. And she's looking at you, and she's real passionate. She's like Axl Rose is a redhead. Strawberry Blonde, more like it's the true redheads. And there's a personality there, a soul there that you could tell that's a true redhead. Like there's a personality usually there. Stereotypes are usually there because it's usually true. It's offensive to people, but truth always hurts, and you cannot change facts. Like you cannot change the facts of how really it goes. Like people don't like the stereotypes of ethnic groups. Well, a lot of the times it's there, stereotypes, because it's usually true, and statistics and things like that, you cannot change the facts of statistics. And yet people get offended because it's true. The 20 years of age, 21, the Stoleys. Yeah, people get offended by truth. They don't really get offended by lies, really. I mean, it's usually truth that people get offended by the most. And they're like, no. And they give this look, and it's like, yeah. And no, I'm not a natural redhead. Singing voices, you could always hear their energy levels. You tell if they're stressed out, or if they're having fun, or if they're going through a better time in their life. My voice used to be very good and smooth when I sang years ago in microphones, and all the neighbors would hear me out, and it sounded really good. Now I crack. I'm all like messed up from stress and years of autoimmune disease problems and straining my voice, and now it doesn't sound the same. People say I sound like I'm from the South now. It sounds like crack. I've been drinking Southern Comfort or something like that. It's not like I'm from Texas, they say, or like the South. People say now, but like it used to sound different when I was younger, and stress carried on. But hanging out with Johnny, definitely my personality changed for sure. I got more, giving me Legacy Brutality posters, Black Sabbath, and he would steal KFC signs from KFC with his friend Chris, and they look like typo negative kind of guys, like big, tall, big, really big, tall guys with boots and clunky, big biker boots, and smelling like sweaty leather jackets that need to be washed, never get washed. And, those kind of guys who are just, they're up to no good, or they're up to no good. There's like, you can see it in the eyeballs and you hear it in the voice. You'd always tell Margaret, a name like Margaret, the 40s.